Good to have you with us on this Tuesday edition of Ed Schultz News and Commentary. We got our first big snowfall overnight, 4 inches here in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. Going to get some more today, so the snowmobilers and the skiers are going to be out and about. Good to have you with us. The shooting at the Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado Springs, Colorado, brings to light the conversation as to what might have motivated this nut job to do that. The fear and the rhetoric that has taken place around the budget in this country has made a lot of people concerned. We're going to shut down the government again. It's going to cost $25 billion. It's Obama's fault. It goes on and on. You know all about it. But the fact is we have a date looming, and that is going to be December 11th. And either we're going to fund the government or we're not. So the conversation of Planned Parenthood, the conversation of refugees from Syria coming into the United States could be these bargaining chips that the conservatives are going to use to get what they want when it comes to funding the government. For more on that, let's go to House member and Budget Committee member John Yarmuth, Congressman from Kentucky. John, good to have you with us.
Hey, Ed, good to be with you.
You bet. Are we going to see a shutdown, or is this is really the first test of leadership, I think, for the new Speaker, Paul Ryan, and also the House Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy? What do you think is going to happen, and what's the conversation?
Well, I think the odds are probably slightly against a shutdown. I certainly hope that there isn't one, but the dynamics that have led to so many situations before, these crises of shutdowns and threatened shutdowns, still exist, and that is there are a significant number of Republicans who are not going to vote for any budget because any spending is too much spending, and therefore, in order to get a budget out of the House or a spending bill out of the House, we're going to have Democratic votes. So while they may think they have some leverage in trying to hold the bill hostage to Syrian refugee funding or something, that's going to cost them Democratic votes. And of course, the leverage we have on the Democratic side is no matter what the cause of a shutdown, this time Republicans will be blamed for it.
Are we ever going to be able to dodge this periodically, that this just won't come up? And why does it constantly come up? Why do we have to make more cuts? Do we have to tax more? Is it our taxation system that we got corporations parking money offshore? What is it, in your opinion?
Well, I think we can always debate whether there's enough money to do what we need to do, and whether as some people say that there's so much waste, we can find it in cutting out waste, and whether it's defense contracting or pharmaceutical pricing or whatever it may be. I think all those are very sound arguments. But I think basically what we have to have is strong leadership that recognizes that these crises undermine stability in the economy. They undermine world confidence in the United States. They undermine American citizens' confidence in their government's ability to function. And, the things that we have been able to do, the difficult things over the last couple of years, have been when Republican leadership has said, okay, I'm going to marginalize my crazy extreme portion of my caucus, and I'm going to rely on some Democratic votes. We're going to have a bipartisan approach. We did that with the raising the debt ceiling and the budget agreement back at the end of September. We did it with funding the Department of Homeland Security. We've done it with several other items. So it's basically that recognition. I think Paul Ryan understands that. Whether he's willing to alienate the same people who forced John Boehner out in doing that is going to be a big question. And that's why I think you're exactly right. It's a test of their leadership, because the reality is that's the only way we get things done.
Well, okay, the scenario that's playing out right now, or potentially could play out, you have McCarthy saying that he thinks that security is becoming the big issue. There is no cheap security, okay? The more we get enthralled in the Middle East, boots on the ground, I know that's not going to happen, but, all of these conservatives are crying for more involvement, yet they don't want to pay for it. And then they come back and say, well, unless we get what we want, we're going to shut down the government. I mean, this is the vicious cycle that continues on. So where's the balancing act here?
Well, I'm not sure I have an answer to that. But with regard to security, what we're hearing from our military leaders is just guarantee them, just tell them what the rules are. They'll make do with what they are given. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of this.
You're talking about the rules of engagement?
No, just the rules. What how they're supposed to operate, not necessarily the rules of engagement, what Congress wants them to do, and what the president and the commander-in-chief want them to do.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is sending out all these crazy signals and giving them the F-35 fighter, which they say they don't need. It's really we don't let them do the things they do best, and we ask them to do things that they don't do very well. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a real fundamental problem we have on the security side.
McCarthy says he may tag legislation of pausing the refugees to get this deal done. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that would be a huge mistake. And, I did 3 events last week, pro-refugee events in Louisville, and they were phenomenal events, and the response of our community has been very good. I think they're on the wrong side of this issue. And, I was thinking this morning, what an effective display it would be to put a picture of Mr. Deere, the alleged, well, he's not really alleged, the guy who shot up the clinic in Colorado, versus a 4-year-old Syrian boy, and say, which one of these are you more afraid of? Yeah. And I think the American people may be slow to getting it, but I think they're getting that a little bit now. It would just be a mistake. We're talking about an approach to refugee settlement that the Republicans are proposing, which doesn't do anything. I mean, it's just a pointless, bureaucratic layer of stupidity. Instead of doing things that actually matter, like making changes in the visa waiver program, which the president is doing now, which actually does create a little bit more security in terms of people entering the country. We have my district is one of the top 10 districts in the country in settling Syrian refugees, and they are wonderful members of our community, and the communities embrace them. They pose no threat. Most of them are kids and senior citizens.
Yeah. And Congressman John Yarmuth with us. I just get this sense that on December 10th at 11 o'clock, you're going to be on the House floor.
I think you're absolutely right about that. Ed.
And I think they're going to be battling over this to the absolute very end. Mr.
Right,
Yarmuth,
but I think just a final thing. I think Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell are much too smart to let the government shut down over Syrian refugees, Planned Parenthood, whatever. You're not going to. If you shut the government down 2 weeks before Christmas, deprive people of their paychecks, then there's going to be hell to pay, and Republicans will be paying it.
John Yarmuth, House member on the Budget Committee, Congressman from Kentucky. John, good to have you with us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed. Good to be with you.
You bet. When we come back, the back and forth rhetoric between Donald Trump and Chris Christie. Who saw what on September 11th, 2001, and why is this now a 1-week story? This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team bring you this production. We're right back. Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today. It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV. subscribe to the Ed Schultz podcast today. Simply log on to iTunes, search for Ed Schultz, and click the subscribe button to have the show delivered to your preferred listening device daily, free of charge. Rate and review the podcast and tell us how we're doing. More details at WeGotEd.com.
Good to have you with us. Communication Workers of America bring you this production. Who saw what on September 11th, 2001, and what does it matter? Well, it all deals with refugees. It deals with the contentious attitude that has developed in this country from the right wing towards the Muslim faith in America. It talks about our security. All of this is enthralled in this conversation. And it all boils down to the leading candidate for the Republicans saying that what he saw on September 11th was a bunch of Muslims in New Jersey who were celebrating that this country, the United States, got hit. This is Governor Chris Christie clarifying his earlier comments about not remembering it.
People microanalyze every word. I said I don't remember it. And I wanted to qualify it that day. Not that I thought it happened, but just to remind people that that was a very emotional day for me. It was personally emotional. And I was not focused that day on everything that was going on all across the state. What I was focused on was my wife and my brother, who were in Lower Manhattan and who I hadn't heard from for a long, long time. But if you'd like me to say it another way, I'm happy to say it another way. It didn't happen.
I think a lot of people can relate to what Governor Christie went through on September 11th because millions of Americans went through the same damn thing. The fact is that Donald Trump is not backing down, and now he's attacking Christie for changing his tone and answer.
He didn't say that the other day. He was very weak the other day. So the other day he said it like, well, he doesn't know. And now I guess he feels a little bit emboldened. He must be careful with what he says.
So it turns out, as I see it, that the Republicans are viewing this as some kind of an opportunity, an opening to bring down Trump, to make sure that he doesn't get the nomination. Even Herman Cain is on the bandwagon. We'll get to that in a moment. But I want to go to Dean Obeidallah, who's a columnist for the Daily Beast and host of a radio show, the Dean Obeidallah Show, on SiriusXM Radio. Dean, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Ed. Good to be on with you again.
You bet. This conversation, this story has gone back and forth now, and Trump has kept it alive because he won't back down on it. Is this a conversation on your show, and what are your listeners saying?
Certainly, it is a conversation we have on the show, and people will call in, and I think there's obviously a partisan factor to this. If you don't believe Donald Trump, you're probably progressive or at least a reasonable human being. You might be a conservative who's reasonable. If you believe Donald Trump, then I think it's simply partisan, that you're saying, I believe him, I don't believe the mainstream media. It doesn't really matter if it's true or not, because demonizing Muslims plays great in the Republican base. There was a poll just a week ago, three-quarters of Republicans think Islam is at odds with American values. So you can't go wrong demonizing Muslims with the GOP. There's nothing about it.
Trump basically is building a part of his campaign based on a poll and misinformation on exactly what is going on in the world of faith.
Well, that's a big part of it. I don't think Donald Trump and the truth are ever words you'd have in the same sentence unless you were saying he was not being truthful. I mean, I just wrote an article just yesterday. It came out about Donald Trump, liar in chief, and went through the lie. I mean, they're literally lies. There's not me saying there's opinion. Things from saying Obama wants to bring in 200,000 Syrian refugees, which is just a lie. Obama said 10,000, maybe going up to 50 or 60,000 later on. Trump saying that most of the refugees coming to this country are going to Republican governor states. That's not true at all. Again, a lie. And these are all from Politifact. These are not my opinion. They've gone through it. They said it's a lie. The idea that Trump's saying the most of the refugees coming in are men, that's not true. Again, a lie. Again, this 9/11 thing, a lie. Trump, at some point, we need more and more voice on the right that stand up and go, you can't lie your way to the White House. At least I hope you can't lie your way to the White House. And this guy really, there's a point where you have to actually wonder if there's a sociopathic quality to this. Like, does he not know the difference between true and false? And he does not care if he's lying? Because we should care as Americans. If a Democrat was doing this and lying all the time, I would call out that Democrat in a second. So would you, Ed. We need more reasonable voice on the right calling out his lies.
Well, this is an opportunity for Christie to keep his mug in front of the camera. There's no question about this, because this back and forth has put Christie front and center. He may be the first one that will directly criticize Trump as you suggest. Here it is.
Being warned by Donald Trump to be careful what I say is fascinating. I don't think Donald often picks his words with great care. So, listen, I was there on September 11th. I wasn't across the river in New York City. I was there. And not only myself, but the state attorney general at the time, John Farmer, good, smart, Republican, has said the same thing that I've said, that it didn't happen. And, the worst part of his claim is that he says he saw it on television. Well, no one has been able to unearth any video of any such thing happening. If it was widely enough shown on network television in New York City, you can usually find that video fairly quickly. So
with that, Trump pivots and says this on MSNBC about the faith of Islam. Here it is.
There's something definitely going on. I don't know that question could be answered. It could be answered two ways. It could be answered both ways. But there's something going on there. There's something that there's a lot of hatred coming out of at least a big part of it. You see the hatred. I mean, we see it every day. You see it whether it's in Paris or whether it's the World Trade Center or whether it's even 1 minute of silence at a soccer game out of respect for the people that died. And there was no respect by a pretty good group of people in that stadium. And that was a week ago, less than a week ago. There's something nasty coming out of there. And you can answer it any way you want. But at least we have to know the problem.
He is talking about Islam. That's the question he was asked. Your response, Dean?
Well, I mean, it's funny and it's sad at the same time. I wrote an article probably in February or March for the Beast saying my concern was that if marriage equality becomes the law of the land, the Republicans will pivot to just full-time Muslim bashing because that issue of demonizing gays and lesbians would be off the table. And that's exactly what's happened here. So they don't have the marriage equality thing to rally their support around. They have the abortion issue and bashing Muslims. Unfortunately, it seems like it's part of the GOP platform. And I think we will see something in the platform this year, the GOP, something about Sharia law or some way where they're actually going to codify discrimination or demonizing Muslims. It's a wake-up call. There's bullies on the right who would demonize people, any minority group, and Donald Trump is really the leader of the bullying field out there, defending a Black Lives Matter protester being beat up as an event, mocking a disabled person, demonizing Latinos, making comments about women, about their look, about Megyn Kelly, if she's on her period or not, and Muslims. It says a lot about the GOP. If they want to pick him, they have every right to pick Donald Trump, but they have defined their party as a hate group, and that's their choice because there's no way around it. Donald Trump is now ventured into the world of full-time anti-Muslim bigotry. He's done Latino stuff, the same thing, that they're sending in rapists, and it's just stoking the flames and dividing as people.
Yesterday, he met with a bunch of Christian pastors from black churches across and parishes across the country. He comes out saying that it was an awesome meeting. There was a lot of love in the room. Was he looking for allies in the Christian faith to help him demonize Islam and try to gather support of Americans that may realize the Muslim faith as a real problem to the United States? And then this is Herman Cain saying that all of this is being used to take down Trump. Listen to this.
But one of the reasons that I continue to set the record straight every day, as many of you all know, is because you have a lot of people in the media and the establishment that are trying to bring down Trump with lies and BS, and it's not going to work.
Lies and BS, and it's not going to work. But there seems to be a pattern here. Get Herman Cain to speak at one of your events, go meet with the black pastors. What do you make of this strategy?
Well, I think he knows he has to build his tent a little bit bigger, Donald Trump. Right now, he's demonized so many groups. You're down to conservative white people, frankly, and you can't win the general election. You can win the primary with that. You can't win the general election. There was numerous people I saw yesterday on TV, like Bishop Carletta Vaughn and others, saying that they want nothing to do with Donald Trump. They would not endorse Trump in her lifetime, she said. And there were other leaders of the black Christian community saying the same thing. There might be some that he appeals to. That would make sense. There's some small percentage that he appeals to who like him. Maybe they think he's a strong leader. I don't think he's appealing to them on the anti-Muslim tirade, more probably economic issues. But Donald Trump's lack of nuance or understanding of any issue is alarming for people.
Right.
He really is almost like Ben Carson's lack of knowledge, saying there's good things, there's nasty things, there's bad things. I wish the media would really hold his feet to the fire on the issue of policy, nuance on policy, and I think it would be an embarrassment to everyone to see how little he really knows about policy in this country, what's going on from economic policy to foreign policy. I think he's just, it's all winging it. It's all, this is good and this is bad, it's huge, it's not huge. At some point, he has to become a real candidate, and the media has to do this service and not keep chasing his tail on these little other things that he wants to define the campaign, and he wants to do the agenda, which is everything but policy. Everything but policy. That's what Donald Trump's about, personality, not policy. Let's hold him to policy.
Dean Obeidallah, SiriusXM radio host. Great to have you with us, Dean.
Thanks,
Appreciate
nice
your time.
you,
Thank you. You bet. When we come back, President Obama has made some interesting comments over in Paris on climate change, which, of course, has drawn reaction from some conservatives and some presidential hopefuls. We'll go through that when we come back. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team bringing this production. We're right back.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
From the North Country, snow on the ground. Now it's time for the winter sports. Good to have you with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. And speaking of the climate, the deniers, of course, of climate change have gotten all kinds of material in recent days because of President Obama's trip to Paris, where world leaders got together to talk about what the president is now calling America's #1 issue. That is climate change. This, of course, has drawn quite a reaction from some of those who on the right who want to be president of the United States. The president even went so far as to say that the United States is at fault and we're willing to do our part.
As one of America's governors has said, we are the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it. I've come here personally as the leader of the world's largest economy and the second largest emitter, to say that the United States of America not only recognizes our role in creating this problem, we embrace our responsibility to do something about it.
Let's turn now to Tiernan Sittenfeld. She is the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the League of Conservation Voters. Tiernan, good to have you back with us.
Hi, Ed. Nice to be with you.
This was quite a statement by President Obama. What kind of impact is it going to have? I mean, we know that the climate deniers are out and about in America. We know who they are. Collectively, it's the Republican Party. It's the conservative movement. They say it's bad for business. They're in denial of everything. But globally, does President Obama break out as a leader with comments like that?
I think you got it exactly right, Ed, in terms of both what President Obama has said and what the Republican climate change deniers have said. But we are tremendously optimistic as we begin day 2 of the international climate negotiations in Paris. We think that given the tremendous leadership that President Obama has shown, whether it's with the Clean Power Plan or rejecting the dirty and dangerous Keystone XL tar sands pipeline that you have talked about so much, which we really appreciate, or stopping leases in the Arctic Ocean, the United States is really leading by example. So as the president is in Paris, has been making very powerful remarks and calling on the world to act, we think there is a lot of potential and really feel confident. Already about 180 countries have submitted their plans for cutting carbon pollution even before these negotiations started. So it's really too bad that Senator McConnell and other climate change deniers are continuing to obfuscate and to stand in the way of progress, but we are optimistic that we will prevail and that we will make progress in addressing the climate crisis.
The president has gone so far to say that this is our number one problem. This drew reaction from Senator Marco Rubio.
No matter how you feel about the issue of the environment and the climate and changes to climate, there's no way any reasonable person could conclude that the most immediate threat we face to our security is what the climate's going to look like in 25 or 30 years. It's just...
Well, now, hold it right there. The reason why the president is saying that, Mr. Rubio, is because your party doesn't want to do anything about it. And if you're going to stand idle and watch this unfold, yes, it is a huge problem. He compares it, the biggest threats to the United States are North Korea, the jihadists, the Islamic terrorists, and all the threats that we face around the world. Well, we're doing something about that. We're trying to secure the country. We're not doing anything about climate change legislatively on a major level that some of these other countries are doing. So when the president says this is our number one problem, yeah, it is, because we have a bunch of deniers who are in a position of authority of making laws in this country. Tiernan, your thoughts on all that?
Well, the thing that's interesting is that the solutions to climate change, which is an incredibly pressing problem, we couldn't agree more with the president, the solutions are win-win-win. Of course they're good for the planet, they're good for the environment, they're also good for the economy because they create good-paying jobs in the renewable energy industry and elsewhere. They also improve our national security because they reduce our dependence on dirty, dangerous fossil fuels that we import from other countries who don't necessarily like us. So if we can be more dependent on clean, homegrown energy, we're going to truly transition to a clean energy future, and we're going to have improved energy security as we do it, improved national security, and a cleaner planet. So we think that there is tremendous opportunity and potential here, and we're really excited as these negotiations are underway because we think there's more momentum than there ever has been before.
And, of course, the conservatives connected to the low-information voter. This is Ted Cruz in Iowa talking about what we drive.
And Obama apparently thinks you're having an SUV in your driveway is more dangerous than a bunch of terrorists trying to blow up the world.
See, now that mindset will appeal to some, the educated people and people who are paying attention to it, but you got to win everybody over to make something happen. But this is what the Republicans are relying on, that kind of attitude, Tiernan.
Yeah, it's absolutely absurd. I mean, it's really an embarrassment, not just that someone like Senator Cruz is in the Senate, but that he's now running for president and saying such outrageous things. And I think that stands in really sharp contrast with what we see some of the major leading business leaders of the entire world, people like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, who are making major personal commitments for their businesses because they recognize that addressing the climate crisis is not just necessary, but that is potentially a huge amount of opportunity from a bottom line perspective as well.
So collectively, the Republican Party cannot be counted on when it comes to this issue. I mean, I don't see Ryan, I don't see McConnell, and listening to what Donald Trump said that what the president has stated is the dumbest thing he's ever heard in politics. So where does that leave us if a Republican wins the White House?
Well, certainly it would be an absolute crisis from a climate change perspective if a Republican wins the White House in 2016, which is why LCV is working so hard to make sure that that doesn't happen and that we have a climate champion in the White House. The one thing I would say is that there's some glimmers of hope on the Republican side. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Senate voted on a Congressional Review Act resolution of disapproval to block the Clean Power Plan, the single largest thing we've ever done to cut climate change. And there were actually 3 Republicans, Senator Collins, Senator Ayotte, and Senator Kirk, who voted to defend the Clean Power Plan, voted pro taking action on climate change. So we'd like to see more of that. The House is actually taking the same vote later today. We are hopeful that some Republicans on the House side will see the light, they will stand strong, they will buck their leadership. But it is very, very unfortunate that we have the leadership of both the House and the Senate continuing to be climate change deniers. And, of course, it's just a real race to the bottom when you look at who's running for president on the Republican side.
Tiernan Sittenfeld, good to have you with us, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the League of Conservation Voters. We'll do it again. Thanks,
Ed.
You bet. This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary. We want you to like us on Facebook. We do a Give Me a Minute feature every day on our Facebook page, We Got Ed. And you can get this production at WeGotEd.com, RawStory.com, and RingOfFireRadio.com. Have a good one. We're back tomorrow.